There we are. Welcome to Jen's Awesome Show. I am here with Michael from EOSUSA, and we're going to talk a little bit about what he does and all of the fun crypto mining stuff that I don't really know very much about. So please forgive the new person questions. To start with, what is EOSUSA?
So EOSUSA it's actually one of the divisions of our bigger blockchain company, but it kind of focuses on the proof of stake, delegated proof of stake, the blockchains. For those that may not be aware, there's a lot of different types of blockchains out there. Some of them use, little toasters that pull more power than Iceland, and other ones are, they run on more normal servers and have just different mechanisms. Either you put up money to be trusted, or you get voted in, or things like that. So what I mainly focus on is the proof of stake, delegated proof of stake division. So it's running servers. I've got racks and racks of servers running all different blockchains and services for those blockchains, and services for the apps on those blockchains. So that's really the majority of what I focus on. Although, like I say, as an overall blockchain company, we actually have interactions with all of the major blockchains. Big Bitcoin, private Bitcoin miners got a couple locations with Bitcoin mining. I don't know, you may have seen some of the pictures that I posted, but
oh yeah,
we have a liquid cooled immersion plant, and then have several air mining plants kind of scattered all around with different partners and whatnot. But so we do private mining. We also do managed mining. So there's a lot of people that just say, I want to buy them and then pay somebody to run them. So, we provide that level of service. I even have some unique, patents and intellectual property on aspects of Bitcoin mining and uses and things like that. So, in general, our company, we love blockchain. We fell in love with it many, many years ago. We've been mining since 2015, 16, somewhere around in there. And of course, gradually scaled up, and it's a whole different world than it was back then,
Oh yeah.
Well, you may or may not know. Like I say, it's hard to get a bearing on where it is now, much less when Bitcoin was still a dirty word,
Exactly. Yeah, it has. I know it's changed. I don't know necessarily the scope or the scale of the change, but I've been told it's been pretty big.
It's what I keep saying. It's like the internet of the 90s,
Yeah.
And when they go to do something and it breaks, and I'm like, just so you know, eBay didn't work every time you used it in the 90s either. And,
Right.
Amazon didn't always get your, book delivered to you, because, they started as a bookstore. That's most people don't even realize is, the evolution of technology is much more than, you really kind of wrap your head around till you go back 30 years.
Yes, it's absolutely astounding. So I have a couple of questions here. What is proof of stake for those of us who don't know?
Absolutely. So the best way to describe it is, I guess, all blockchains have some level of validation that everybody trusts, right?
Okay. Yeah.
We all agree that what's on the chain is immutable and valid and whatever, right? So there's different mechanisms for what a chain agrees, who can sign the transactions and who's legitimate and trusted to do that. Bitcoin is very, very decentralized. It's all mathematics. It's all power hungry little boxes. There is no trust, really. It's just an inherent trust in the math and the code. Proof of stake takes a little different aspect that says you don't need to do all these mathematical calculations just to have somebody that you trust validate the blockchain. And so the majority of a lot of non-proof of work, so Bitcoin is proof of work is what they refer to that.
Okay.
Proof of stake is, I think, like Dash and some of these other ones, some of the other top coins as well. They say, look, you don't need these little toasters that pull all this power. You can run it on a regular, Linux, Amazon server or whatever. But what makes you the trusted entity is what you did to become that entity. In proof of stake, it's normally, well, I put up $100,000 or 50 or whatever. You buy you have their tokens, and then you stake them ultimately, and you say, look, I'm going to do this job. You're going to, hopefully pay me to do this job. And if I don't do this job successfully, you penalize me by taking my money. So I am a trusted validator because I have proof of stake in the game. And if I'm no longer a trustworthy validator, you take away my job and you take away my escrow type of thing, right? So the idea is that's where the trust comes from. You trust not monkeying and erasing and doing different things in the accounting, because if I do, I have a lot of stake to lose. Make sense?
Got it. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
So at least from a 30,000 foot view, I mean, and there's different variations, and of course it's all in code, and of course, nerds go crazy, but that's the general idea behind proof of stake. And then delegated proof of stake is actually to the next level if you really want to make your mind melt. But Wax, which is what Uplift and Alien Worlds. I don't know what all projects you're involved with in the ecosystem, but those are the two kind of big ones most people in our past that we seem to cross in. But that's based off of the Wax blockchain, and it is called delegated proof of stake. And so instead of being a trusted entity by putting up, say, $100,000, the idea behind it is the token holders are the voters. So kind of imagine democracy style, not going the path, but if you hold a token, you hold a vote. Well, if you hold a bunch of tokens, your weight is much heavier than somebody else's. And so the token holders vote for what validators they want to run the chain. So where it come from is that I don't actually have to put up any money as a just raw proof of stake, but I have to provide some value back to the chain in some way, either a raw just validator, hey, I'm trusted, because that's the job I'm getting paid, is to be trusted and validated. But what it's kind of evolved to is, well, you're not just going to vote for somebody just to run a server. What are you doing to, as a token holder, advance our position, or secure the chain, or bring in more business, and Wax is real big on that we get monthly reviews. We're a block producer, they call them guilds over here on Wax, but we're one of those validators on the Wax blockchain, and we do all these different services and try to help projects and run these. I think I've got 130 servers for all the different chains, not just Wax, but we do all of this and hopefully get credit for it and advance the ecosystem to the point where voters support us and decide they want us to be, there's normally 21 active block producers on EOSIO chains. So that's kind of the underlying code framework that a lot of these chains, EOS runs on it, Wax runs on it, several others, FIO, Telos, Proton. Anyway, I don't want to go too nerdy on you, but happy to answer any more about it if you want.
Well, I do have one more question. So let's say that I have a bunch of Wax and I want to stake it. How do I learn about my staking choices? Where would I even find that information?
Your choices or the ability to do it? The ability to do it's actually probably easier.
Yeah, well, the ability to do it, I figured out how to do it, but then I see this long list of names and I have no idea how to find out information about anybody. And so that's where I'm stuck.
So that's a very interesting conundrum that all the proof of stakes have come into and led to problems with, call it voter apathy, or I don't know. I don't recognize any of them. How many, I can't tell you how many people have told me, as I'm involved with Uplift and Alien Worlds and all of that I vote for you because I recognize your logo, which is great. I mean, at least it's, they know who they're voting for, but it's really hard to know who the hell are all, because I can tell you all those other people you see in that list, I work with them all the time. They're all great people. I mean, there's not a bad block producer on Wax, or really even a lot of the ecosystems now. I mean, they've kind of weeded out all the bad stuff, and they're all legitimate, good teams. So if any of them earned your vote, they would ultimately, it wouldn't be wasted. But it's really hard. It's really hard to kind of, you're not going to spend all your time digging in and looking at all of this information about them. I mean, hell, you're doing good if you're even engaged enough to go and think about voting, right? You should, but how and why? So I guess to touch on the how, blocks, wax.blocks.io, BLO.io, It's a great tool set for a lot of things. The Block Explorer, it also has like wallet interactions. That's where you can stake. That's where you can, get your resources, send things, see your history, all of that, as well as there's a voting section. They So by default, I think what you'll notice is blocks. They have a proxy that says, look, if you delegate your vote to us, we vote for, who we support, which are all great teams, and they've tech infrastructure and things along that line. But there is the ability to stake your vote to a proxy, and then the proxy ultimately do your votes for you. So that ability for somebody else that may be more in tune with it to be able to make those decisions for you.
Got it.
Your vote, cast your vote for you. Secondly, Wax is actually a little unique. Is that I mentioned every month we submit progress reports. I guess it's almost like to what's called the Office of Inspector General. So there's a committee formed. I think they're elected every 3 months, but there's 3 members right now. Basically, all of the guilds submit their here's what we've been doing, here's what we're working on, here's how awesome we are, to a centralized body that kind of takes them and rates them and just validates them, so to say, and gathers them all into one spot and actually publishes recommendations. And it's a scoring system. These people are doing a lot, they've earned a lot of points. It's not the actual votes, but it helps dictate currently who's the faster mover and shaker, or
Okay.
So there is the ability, and they publish that report. It is public. I'll have to track down the link. It's not just blasted on.
Yeah, no.
But it's unique that they actually do collect and stress. What else are you doing for the chain? And getting that information. Like I say, it's not really presented in a, here voter, here's all the different aspects. There are some actually cool, I don't know, secondary sites, we'll say, that have offered some of those features where you can go and register and see all of the voting theories of a proxy. Aloha EOS, which is another Wax guild, and on many of the other chains as well. Great crew. Nate and Patrick. But they wrote a tool that basically you can see the information about the proxy. The proxy can provide, here's who we vote for and why we vote for. You can see a list of that proxy's votes currently. So there's a few tools that are out there to try to help that, but it's a very valid issue on all of the chains. All right, who the hell are all these people, right? I don't know. I'm just going to put 30. Valid point.
Well, yeah. So that's walking into it not knowing any of that background. It's a whole lot of, I have no idea and where to even start. So this is good. I will start taking a look. I'm very curious. Mostly, I feel like I need to know more.
What I would say is, if you really wanted to, make an effort, so to say, and not that heavy burden or whatever, right? I mean, you can go and chase down everybody in the Telegram channels and talk to them personally if you really wanted to. But on Blocks.io, actually, on the front page, wax.blocks.io, all of the guilds will be listed. You'll see all the guilds listed there, and all of us should be providing a website for us.
Excellent.
It provides some of the stuff for the network itself, like where our nodes are, who this, that, and the other. But there should also be some links to either website or Twitter. I forget what all they have, but some social medias and their website and stuff. But don't go to ours. Ours is horrible. We got to redo some things, but you won't learn a lot about us on our website because we haven't put a lot of time into it. I spend all my time on these awesome calls, but
I believe it.
The VPs, have put some effort into their website and try to exemplify what they do, what some of their values are, and different projects they're working with. But
excellent. Well, I will be taking a look. Let's see, what else did I run into here? You mentioned there is a difference between air cooling and liquid cooling. When is one more preferable than the other?
Well, if you don't have cold air, that's obviously makes it a little more difficult. Is, the ones that are up in, I don't know, some are up in Canada,
Yep.
obviously have a much easier time just running wide open, and I don't really have to, cool any air. I just got to blow cool air in. Versus liquid
Yes.
cooling. We're here in South Carolina, so it's a
Oh,
little bit
wow.
in here.
Uh-huh.
It ain't Florida, but it ain't New York,
Yes.
So it actually a little bit there, as well as electronics, and this is just kind of fundamental computing, I don't know, nerd. Electronics don't like to be hot. I mean,
Right.
anything, they get less efficient. They obviously have troubles and stuff like that. So if you can do a better job at cooling things, in theory, the equipment can run better, faster, harder, whatever. So, the interesting tidbit that did you see the pictures that I posted in there? I think,
Oh,
and
I
then
saw those pictures. That was
so that's not
incredible.
water. That's actually it's a engineered compound. Same thing you would actually see in those big transformers out there at the power company or whatever. They're
Oh,
full
I
of
didn't know that. Okay.
they're full of
Yeah.
liquid, and that helps cool them down because I mean electricity produces a lot of heat. So,
Yeah.
but it's actually about 1,000 times more dense than air. So I don't know how much you know about physics or whatnot,
A little
but
bit.
to move heat, if something is thicker in the same amount of movement, it's more effective, right? So,
Hmm.
and anyway, I took particle physics, so I understand that there's a vibrating, whatever. But
Yeah.
the point is that it's denser and it's more efficient, and obviously to electronics that can make a big difference. You can either
Definitely.
run them more stably or even run them harder. I mean, we actually can. That's where you'll hear maybe water cooling in the computer nerd world. These hot rod rigs of these Minecraft rigs, right? The ones that have
Hmm.
$4,000 worth of blinky lights and shit. Um, that's why they water cooled, is because you can run them harder. You can, and of course, not even run them harder, but when you run things really hard, you get a lot of heat. So
Yes.
you just need that just to even be able to do your normal job. But overclockers and whatnot, you cool it down more. We may have a visitor. Um,
Excellent.
anyway, so but yeah, the that's actually one of I now know we're somewhat unique in that aspect that we do so much liquid cooling is I mean I have like thanks for the phone. No balloon. We're live on the air, sweetie. My 5-year-old.
Oh, yeah, I have one of those too.
Can you go back downstairs, sweetie? Okay, maybe not. Yeah, let's see.
So what is the cooling fluid composed of? What is it made from?
Um, I mean, it's engineered, so it's not a natural fluid. It's non-corrosive, non-toxic, everything like that. But I think the technical term for it is dielectric fluid. But they've been using it for a long time. A more natural version, which is from oil, which is transfer oil. Is that what it is? But it's in the transformer oil. That's what it is. Transformer oil. That's what those big canisters out there, at the power plants and whatnot. That's how they're cooling down all that stuff. So they've been making it
Okay.
petroleum, oil based for a long time. And they finally, the super nerds got together and said, no, let's take these molecules and make the same thing. But oh no, we can make it better,
That's nifty. I had no idea that was even possible.
Most people
That's
don't
neat.
realize, but I mean, that's not, we're doing Bitcoin mining out of it. And that may be more unique for our situation. But like all your Amazon servers and Google and a
Mhm.
lot of those super, computing centers, they've been doing liquid cooling because there's just so much heat, and it's more effect. It's hard at scale to cool with air. The more air you work with, the less efficient it kind of gets. I mean, it's harder to duct it and aim it and control it. And, oh, well, I got this hot pocket of air up at the ceiling. I don't have that. It's also another interesting, when you walk into our plant, it's almost quiet. You hear the pumps running, but I don't know if you've ever heard a Bitcoin mine, but they are loud. Those fans are absolutely normally screaming and just a real high pitched, almost deafening sound.
That sounds awful.
It's not, you will not walk into a Bitcoin mine and not
without ear protection.
Yeah, I mean, well, you should. You can. You're gonna hate life, but when I go up there and I work on them, they'll sometimes send me up there to do the networking. Is that I'll put in the foam earplugs and the ear one to smash them in, because I mean that sound bleeds in, and I mean just imagine those little bitty fans, on computers and whatnot, but 10 times faster, and of course they don't care about the noise; they care about making money.
Exactly.
Air. Is it hot? Spin them faster,
Yeah.
So,
okay. I'm just taking a look here at my questions. There are a couple things in the comments too here.
sure.
I would like to address, Zestra is asking, what video cards are you using?
So we don't do a lot of GPU mining anymore. I have racks and racks of older AMDs, the old 470s and 480s from the ETH mining days. So may actually repurpose them for some of the Minecraft projects. But we had AMD, which back in the day was kind of one of the heavier ones. It shifted over to NVIDIA, but it's a lot more work to run GPU mining rigs. It's like a Frankenstein unit, which I love. I'm a hardware guy. That's where I got my start in it. That's why I got brought into this. Was, oh, you like hardware? Here's some hardware. Here's 700 video cards hanging from racks that are all just plugged in with wires everywhere. So versus like you saw those pictures. Oh, it's much more industrial, and nope, it's a box. It's got the cards in there. They're ultimately doing the same thing. Maybe that's something to kind of touch on is 2009 or whenever they launched, Satoshi launched Bitcoin or whatever. The mathematics was very easy to do. There weren't many people doing it. You could do it on a regular computer, right? So, I mean, it didn't require anything special, right? So you could just run it, idle in the background, and hey, do the math and mint some Bitcoin and make 10,000 Bitcoins to buy a pizza. I don't know if you know that story, but the guy that the first successful purchase of something with Bitcoin was this guy sold 10,000 Bitcoin and got a pizza. Of course,
that's incredible.
It was internet money back then, and of course, and so that was a big, hey, I bought something with Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
You know what 10,000 Bitcoin is worth today?
More than I have.
Oh, more than I think like a state has,
Probably.
So point is, that's the ongoing joke is 10,000 Bitcoin for a pizza or whatever. But, so anyway, back in the day, it was magic internet money, nerd money. The only thing people knew about it is when they went to a porn site and got ransomware. The hackers asked for Bitcoin. That's everybody's.
Yeah, that's exactly
wonderful. No wonder it has a bad rap, but. So it started progressing, and people that started getting involved with it and seeing and buying some pizzas with it, whatever, started saying, well, your normal CPU in your computer is great, but it's not the most powerful. It's designed to do everything, but it doesn't do one thing very well, right? Master, jack of all trades, master of none, right? But a GPU, a graphics card, is a processor, but they go in there and they design it to do one thing. Videos, right? Process these videos. Don't worry about doing math. Don't worry about doing algorithmic scales or whatever the hell else, it might do. Just do graphics. And it's much more efficient to say just do one thing than to do all sorts of things. So a GPU is a much more specialized, chipset, but it's still a chip that can be programmed. So what these nerds figured out, hey, I can take this GPU that can do this mathematical calculations faster than the CPU and basically hijack it and say, don't show a video or something on a screen, do this mathematical calculation and phone it home to the interwebs and make me some magic internet money. So what they started doing is they started progressing and they pushed out all the CPU miners, because then the GPUs were so much more powerful that it wasn't cost effective to even do it on your computer. You couldn't keep up, right?
Right.
So that was the evolution that kind of started, I don't know, 2015, 16, give or take that. Then what they figured out is that while that's an easier source of hardware, I mean, there were GPUs all over the place. You couldn't buy any. It pissed all the gamers off because you could not go and buy a video card. If there was a video card on Newegg, somebody was buying it and sticking it in a mining rig because it was too profitable, And so what they started figuring out is that, all right, well, what if you manufactured the chips themselves? You know what I mean? Like, instead of taking a GPU and tweaking it to do what you want, what if you went, straight to the factories and had it programmed and actually designed, instead of doing graphics, to make it do BTC mining, And so that's what ASICs are, application-specific integrated circuits. That's what ASIC stands for. But it's basically, they took that board and they said, what can I do to make it as fast as possible to do one thing? Compute Bitcoin nonsense. And so that's where the ASIC age kind of came in. And it basically pushed out all the GPU mining to where, yeah, you can do it. And there's still like Ethereum and whatnot that tend to use it. But if you're industrial scale, which is what all mining's kind of going to, is that if you're not cheap power, big scale, making, penny, it's just a hobby in your basement. But it ultimately kind of pushed out the profitability of the GPUs, is that it takes so much more effort to manage a rack with, I had motherboards that had 13 video cards on it.
That's a lot.
It doesn't run like that normally. So, you're, and of course, I'm squeezing blood from that turnip. So, they're on tilt and they're pulling power. Fans are spinning so fast, they're slinging blades off. And it's a lot more maintenance to run GPU rigs than it is to run ASICs, or even, a rack of 20 servers running all these different chains or whatever. So we have them, and actually we toy around with them from time to time, and we monitor. But all of our resources are almost better allocated towards one side or the other, maintaining thousands of these Bitcoin miners all over, North America, or running the servers for, proof of stake, delegated proof of stake, going on these calls and getting our name out,
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Well, good. So tell me then a little bit about the engineered fluid. Is it recyclable? Like, does it have a life cycle to it? I'm assuming it does.
I am not the chemical engineer to know everything. We've got several of our partners, and one of them is a chemie, and so he knows way more about it. But the best way I can describe it, I'm sure there's a lifespan to it at some point. It does somewhat evaporate. If you get it too hot, it'll start evaporating. But
okay,
it's kind of like the oil that they use at the power company. It's really just designed, and as long as you keep it clean, as long as you, it's molecules, but it's an engineered fluid. So it's chemically designed to move heat,
Yeah. So in terms of keeping it clean, do you have to have special facilities to hold everything, or it can just be open to the air to collect whatever? Or
it is able to be open air. So like our vat, the top off. It's not a closed condensed system. There's actually two ways of cooling. I think it's one phase and two phase cooling, but I think we do one phase, which is basically just run it over, run the fluid over the miners and, get the heat out. Two phase, I think, is actually, it includes like evaporation. More, you cool it at the tank level to heat and evaporate, which, exhausts energy in the world of physics, is evaporate or condensing, I guess, evaporate, condense. And then you take that fluid and cool it down through like a cooling tower. So that's like a two phase. So we in our location do a one phase, which is just simply run it through there. There's 700 tons of cooling tower out behind our plant. So like your house is, I don't know, 1, 2, 8 tons. There's 700 tons. Because air, again, we have 50 tons of air just because it's a big warehouse, and
we do run some air miners for tests and whatnot, but there's a big plumbing system that we have a well. We're right actually close to a river, so we actually have a well that goes down and pumps out well water, treats it, because just you can't pull raw water and use it. Interesting tidbit. It's iron and minerals and all this.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, so there's a little bit of treatment, over there. There's this pump pulls it out and runs it through a big backbone system that runs down the entire warehouse, and ultimately feeds heat exchangers at each of the vats. So you saw there's a vat of about 30 machines per.
Yeah.
And so it's water for 90% of the system, right? Obviously cheaper.
Okay. Yeah.
So the majority of things are, well water that we pump out, run through these big, massive VFD pumps, and are piping it down to each one of the vats. And then at each vat, there's a heat exchanger, which is like the radiator in your home. And basically comes down, runs through this radiator. The cooler water runs through the same radiator, and the heat transfers over. And then we pump the water out to a cooling tower, which I don't know if you've ever seen it, but like on top of big buildings and stuff, you don't have air conditioners as much. You actually have cooling towers, and you'll notice sometimes there's big slats of water, the big boxes with like slats and water rolling down.
Yeah.
Ours are actually big circular things with fans inside of them. But interestingly enough, in the world of physics, if you take water and spread it out and like rain it or give it more surface area, it diffuses, heat. So that's how you do heat. It's not 50 degrees, but it's not 160 degrees. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's to cool it from 160 to 100, as opposed to you think of it, or most of us think of it as, oh, I got to go down to 68 degrees. No, that's not the way physics actually has to work. But cooling towers. But anyway, so there's the majority of the plumbing is the big, water back and forth, and that's not unique to us. That they use that in a lot of different, applications. But then, like I say, it goes into an absolute monstrosity of piping, under each one of those vats that, filters and gauges and valves and all of that. But the meat and taters of it is the black pipe that comes in is water, and the gray pipe that comes in is fluid, and they all meet in this heat exchange, and that's where the magic happens, and it just keeps cycling, right?
Okay.
We take 160 degree fluid out of the top, and we cool it to, I don't know, 120 degrees or something. I mean, it's still hot as hell, but it's cool enough to keep it 65 degrees Celsius, whatever that is.
Oh yeah. Okay, that's good and hot. That's about not quite twice body temperature.
That may be where the sensors go off or whatever. But like I say, I know it's damn hot. I mean, you go to pick up those things, you got to wear leather gloves, not because you're going to get shocked, but because you're going to burn your hands.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, I'm going to bop back to the comments here. There's some good questions in here too. Another one from Zestra, wondering if the chip shortage is affecting your mining operation.
Not so much the mining operation. Actually, it's helping the mining operation because there's not as many new ones flooding in there. We are a reseller of miners, so yes, that has dramatically caused a pretty big shortage. But it also, I mean, to us as the miners, we had a bunch of older miners that kind of naturally progressed their way out. They were called S9s. They were the standard 5 years ago, but newer, faster, bigger had come out. So, I mean, we had them pulled off and thrown on the shelf. But because you can't buy them, and because things have taken back off, they became much more profitable again. So that's why I say it's a double-edged sword. I mean, we can. It's interesting. You can buy them. I mean, they're still making them. You just gotta pay top dollar. And to be honest, I mean, you gotta have the right connections. I mean, it's like even over here in the States is that you really, if you want something, you almost kind of got to know somebody and get in front of them. Somebody else knows them and is going to make a golf course deal and be like, oh, yeah, sorry, we're out of quantity, or you can only buy 50 or whatever. But absolutely. It just like the rest of the world, As a matter of fact, even more so, because we're not as important as maybe other chips that may be needed and made. But yeah, you're definitely seeing it impact the supply. But they're still going out there. The hash rate's still going up, I promise.
Okay, interesting. Another question here from the comments. Someone wants to know if you need to have a special computer to be able to use liquid cooling, or if you can work it out with a regular run-of-the-mill Best Buy computer.
You can, liquid cooling is just like an application, so to say. What I would say is you probably don't need liquid cooling for a Best Buy computer. You don't need liquid cooling for a big badass computer. I mean, some of my high-end servers that I'm putting in with these i9s and stuff like that, I mean, we don't run liquid cooling for them, but I'm not overclocking them and putting out more heat than it's designed and able to deal with, And of course, overclocking, it's stable at normal temperatures. Well, with overclocking, you're trying to push it harder and, get it cooler. Obviously, it can run harder if it's cooler. So water cooling is more effective. Therefore, you can push it a little harder, right? But I mean, yeah, you can buy a water cooling kit for anything you want. I mean, you're going to have trouble fitting it in a Dell case because it's not really designed for that. They pack them in like sardines. But it's more, instead of fans, you just have lines of water and fluid and little radiators and stuff that just run everywhere, right? It really looks like Frankenstein.
I believe it.
Fun fact, you can put highlighter fluid or some kind of, whatever fluid, and it blacklight reactive and make it flow all around. You can do some really cool things with liquid cooling. And of course, those, nerd gamers and I say nerd in a endearing fact, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
They've come up with some creative uses and stuff for that, but it's doable on anything. It's just not practical for the majority of people.
Okay, that's pretty reasonable. How did you get into crypto mining?
So my CEO, David, and I have worked together. We have a managed service IT company here in South Carolina that we've worked together for a couple decades now. We're partners in the firm, and so we've got a long working relationship together. And he started getting into crypto. Actually, we all kind of started getting in, several of us over there, when we started seeing it really showing up in ransomware and stuff. We'd start getting calls from people and saying, hey, they're asking for Bitcoin, and all right, well, I mean, we'd heard of it, being in the nerd circles, but not really, I don't know, magic internet money. Well, when it really started, when the hackers started asking for it, that's whenever, all right, well, what the hell is this, right? And it was like, oh, you can make it on the side, and get paid to do this. So David originally started getting into it whenever it like I say, at our IT firm, we started seeing more instances of it. And slowly, more of us computer nerds started that worked over there started getting involved and spinning up rigs and learning more about it. And then, like I say, I think it was 16 or 17, maybe 17. David and some of the other senior partners went to make an actual business out of it. So we pulled them all out of our garages and bought I don't know, it's like a 40,000 square foot warehouse, and started racking and stacking. We didn't do liquid cooling back then, but started racking and stacking. We also had, like, say, rooms of GPU rigs, so you'd walk in and it'd just be these rows and rows of, we used bread racks. So they're wire bread racks, and you zip tie the video cards onto each of the shelves. And then the motherboards just sat on the shelves themselves, and power supply. And that's why I say Frankenstein. You walk in and we're like, what in the hell are you guys doing here?
Yep.
But not like you see those vats, you're like, whoa, it looks like, it looks like the Matrix, right? We're all little glowing bodies and fluid or whatever. It looked like an absolute computer nerd nightmare when you walked in and saw 700, 800 video cards hanging with, wires everywhere. But anyway, so it progressed from, and I actually kind of peeled off from my managed service job, both of us, David still does a lot over there as a CEO, but I pretty much exclusively kind of peeled off and exclusively work for our blockchain company, which is my company as well. But then I became one of the day-to-day, this is my full-time job. I mean, I run blockchain, it's networking and stuff like that. But now I get to play games for a living.
Which is great. That's fun.
It's a whole nother world.
Absolutely. So if I were to be 10 years in the future, looking back at approximately now, how has what you're doing changed the world?
I don't know. I mean, 10 years is just asinine, and any
It
tech
is.
block.
It really is.
We joke about 3 months of the year or two, in that. I mean, I do think, I don't know, I guess maybe 3 points. I think that some of the friction or strongholds on the world's finance is going to be unlocked a little bit. You're not going to, definitely in 10 years, you're not going to topple the financial system, but people can send funds to each other electronically and go to BTC ATMs and get it out. I mean, it's already starting to revolutionize. I mean, we're all getting used to Venmo and PayPal and whatnot, right? That's going to be what the next 10 years, it's not going to be Venmo or Venmo. You see PayPal does blockchain, right? I mean, they're just more, you'll use blockchains, hopefully, for, financial and transfer of assets and stuff like that. So I do think that's going to be something that's starting to take off. Now, maybe Bitcoin isn't as bad of a word. Dogecoin maybe, but anyway, that'll be one. Secondly is I do think that the gaming industry is about to get rocked. This is the next level of your assets and global assets and be it on Wax, be it, Ethereum and OpenSea and all of that. I mean, they're different strokes, different folks, but and that's what I'm having to explain to people is that what's this $1 million art? Oh God, don't focus on the art. that's part of it, but that's an even harder concept to wrap your head around. You didn't like the art to begin with, and now it's digital art, and it was $1 million. And what? But game assets, and back in the day, I used to play the Magic the Gathering game, and I think the later generations were Pokemon and stuff like that. But there's the card games or battle games or things like that where you own an asset and you battle each other, you collect them, you do all these different things, but they got damaged. They don't whatever. Is this real or not? I don't know. I printed it. So I mean a lot of that's going to change. And in my opinion, and even economics, that you can get your funny. Well, and I didn't play World of Warcraft, but some people maybe I've heard and whatever that there was like the World of Warcraft gold. That was their in-game currency. You couldn't really do anything with it outside of the game, but obviously people would, all right, go to eBay and sell something and I'll meet you in game and trade it, right? I mean, they started to bridge, you could play a game and you could get an asset that other people wanted and be able to, sell them to other people and even outside of the game. So that's, I think, a big piece is this global market and the sharing of assets and the exclusive ownership of assets for the gaming industry. NFTs. I do think that's looking back when you say 2020, 2021, it sucks because of the pandemic, but it was the rise of NFTs. And I do think that's going to be something,
Yeah.
And maybe not on Wax, maybe not on Ethereum. I mean, but that concept of Sony owning all of your assets because you play on their server and they decide, no, you don't have them anymore.
Yeah.
How do I sell them? Well, legally you can't, I mean, you can go and do whatever you want, but I mean, I think that people play games. I mean, they invest a lot of money into games. I mean, time, if anything, is, that day of the assets being locked and having to work really hard to get a return on that investment, so to say. I do think that those bridges are going to start getting broken down because you're going to have the option to do it. I can do this game and not do it, or I can do this game and do it.
Yes. What's preferable? Yeah, definitely. Um, what do you see being the next big thing in crypto mining? The next innovation or the next idea, the next use case?
Mining or
Hmm.
so explicitly mining?
Mining or blockchain in general in terms of technology?
I'd say, and I don't know, I mean, I'd probably roll back to the technology side. I think that NFTs are the next big thing because, I mean, people are accepting maybe it's financial or whatnot. They don't maybe agree with $1 million one-of-one artwork, but they'll be able to more wrap their heads around and people will embrace it. And the chains are building frameworks to do it, right? You don't have to be a super nerd blockchain expert to do it in a
Yeah.
year, right?
Yeah.
So I think that that's the next big thing coming. I mean, finance, yeah, we'll make some advancements, but I mean, you're fighting a massive battle, and I mean, I'm not sure you really do want to topple that system when it comes down to it. Hate it if you want anarchists, but I mean, there's a whole nother aspect to it. So I would say NFTs, mining,
Okay.
and I can't probably say too much, but it's an industrial game. It's far, yeah, that's fine. You can run an ETH rig in your basement or whatever, but you and I both know, I mean, you're making a couple $100 a day. That ain't a business. That's a hobby, right?
Yeah.
It's industrial. It's gone industrial. There are people that do this for a living. And so it's just going to get harder and harder and harder. But what's going to end up happening is I do think you're maybe seeing the crest and people are catching, publishing articles and stuff about it is we use power. I mean, our building pulls a neighborhood's worth of power. I mean, we use a massive amount of power. Now we have an interesting whatever, and this leads to it. People really, and I was just having this conversation this morning with somebody, really smart guy, but anti Bitcoin mining because it's so non-green or carbon. What do you call that? I mean, it ain't energy efficient. It ain't green energy, right? They do use some green energy, but when it really comes down to it, it's no, just pull as much power as you possibly can and do it. But it's shifting to, number one, the power plants, the governments, and all sorts of things like that. I mean, they're kind of getting pissed off about it, right? I mean, all right, you want to do it, you're going to pay for it, right? Well, you start having to pay for it, and you don't do that as much anymore, right? I mean, it's a kind of balancing act. So, all those people that had cheap power don't have cheap power anymore. Why? Because the miners came in and pulled it up until it's not cheap anymore. It's normal. Well, then the miners stopped coming, right?
Yeah.
So the evolution of different aspects of power. So, for instance, interesting tidbit, we're right down the road from a nuclear plant. Just want to read, we have cheaper power here, is, and I don't want to go too much into it, but nuclear power plants never turn off. They don't have an off switch.
Okay.
They're constantly producing power. But you don't use power like that.
Right.
You don't on 24/7. So there's actually a discrepancy between demand and production. And you got power, you got to go somewhere. So there are scenarios where you're not the bad man on the block. Give me my power and I will take it at whatever cost is, whatever. Is that there's actually applications where it's not as bad or even not as financially impactful. Is that if you don't pull when everybody else is pulling, they don't care as much, right? So in my opinion, and I can definitely tell you with our blockchain company, I can't go into too much details, probably already said too much, but there's going to be a shift from just raw brute force, rack and stack them. I mean, do you see that picture? It's literally a shipping container that was a plasma cutter was taken to, and opened up. And I mean, we do our things to, it's basically a bad building, but I mean, there's more consideration to it than that now. I mean, you can't just do that, but there's also people don't understand the power grid. Most of the people that are upset about that don't even have a clue about the way the power grid works. And like I say, is that, and it doesn't take rocket science to be like, oh, I guess you're right. A nuke plant can't turn off. what do? Got all this power. So, that the creative uses of that. And so, yeah, we currently use more of our power than Iceland or something like that. I think I remember seeing that in a report that Bitcoin mining estimation is pulling more than like countries in power, right? You'll see some of that going down. You'll see some of that as, yeah, but it was getting used anyway, or it was going to waste. That's the biggest thing, is there's a lot of wasted energy in the world. People don't know. So those types of shifts versus running them in your garage, or even just plug them in, make sure the power isn't too expensive, and let them go. Because it's hard to find that cheap power now, because that's what's happened. You know what I mean? Oh,
Yeah.
no. So.
Okay.
I don't know.
This is interesting, yeah, because nobody talks about the off times for the grid when you have that imbalance of power, when there's more power than what's being used.
Like I say, there's fluctuation, and it's funny. The power companies don't even get it either. Even from the mining side, we really had to work with the power company, because they'd come in and, I mean, I have seen power transformers spewing oil out, and I have seen power wires this big burned to a crisp, and it's like, not ours, theirs. And it's like, come on, guys. I mean, y'all are the power company or whatever. I mean, my electricians are telling you this ain't going to cut it, right? But they don't really get, there is no, we don't have an off switch either. I mean, the power company, the new power company obviously does, but the lines and the actual distribution channels and whatnot, they don't really get, they understand demand. They understand, oh, you've got peak times, you've got this, that, and the other. We don't have a peak time. 24 hours a day, as fast as those machines can run, that's what you're pulling. There's no weeble wobble. The only weeble wobble is one turned off and we're scrambling to turn it back on. Yeah. And that's really different, actually, for the equipment and whatnot, is to run things at constant load. We had to train them on it. They knew it, in the basis, but it's just a foreign concept for even plants. We were big, auto manufacturing around here, and there's a lot of plants, that electro harden things and whatnot. But it's pull a lot of power, turn it off. Pull a lot of power, turn it off. Or a normal whatever. But nope. Bam, hammer down. Don't turn it off ever.
So do you see anything coming in the future that might reduce the power needs at all, or change kind of how that's structured?
I mean, technical evolution is definitely going to drive it down. So, I mean, like I talked about, the S9s that they pulled like 1400 watts and produced like, I don't know, 1400 terahash or something like that. The next batch, that when we deconned the F9s, were like 3,300 watts, but they produce like 68 terahash or something like that. Pushing at it, so less power, more Bitcoin mine. And then the next evolution has been like, I don't know, 3,600 watts for 100 terahash or whatever. So it's definitely progressing more, but there is there's little incentive not to keep going. Does that make sense? Do it more. It's industrial. Is that, because I have a 2 megawatt feed or a 5 megawatt feed or whatever. I'm using as much of that as I possibly can. Now I got new equipment that uses half the amount of power to do the same work. You put another stack of miners in there and you use the 5 megawatts. You just make as much off of it now. So yes, but just the business aspect is, I mean, unless you don't have the capital or the supply, I mean, it's hard to get Bitcoin miners. I mean, there's very little reason for it to get smaller. The only reason to get smaller is you can't afford it, so to say, right? It gets too expensive.
Okay. So but there is still the capacity to be able to be more efficient with what you do have.
Oh, it absolutely. I mean, just like your computer, just like everything else, it is chips. They're getting smaller, they're getting faster, they're getting less power hungry, they're getting whatever. But when you talk about the end game, well, Michael, do you think one day you won't pull 8 megawatts of power? You'll pull 7, 6. Yeah, next month. And then I'm going to be slamming 100 more miners in there to rip it right back up to 8, because why wouldn't I? You know, it's a game of scaling and industrial. You know, the more you can do, the more think, add up. You know?
Right. That makes sense from an economic perspective.
I hate to say that. I mean, I'm sure people are going to hate us for it, but
oh, probably. That's because that, you know, feeds the next question of is your organization doing anything to try and offset that power usage or use alternate forms of power? You mentioned nuclear, obviously, but are there any other explorations into?
Really, really wish I could talk about them because they are cool. It's related down that path, and that's what I was saying. The creativeness of don't just brute force it, but think about different things. You know, I mean, look outside of the box. But I mean, it involves patents and
not yet.
Totally out there yet, but and that in itself should say something as opposed to just buying miners and doing it, right? You know.
Yeah, that says lots.
Doing more and thinking about it versus just being creative, making deals, you know.
Yep.
So anyway, but yes, absolutely. I'm not sure how many others are. I mean, I feel like that's probably going to be where you're starting to divide. Either you get it so cheap you don't care and you can survive, you're not innovating and you're probably going to get pushed out, or you're doing something to be able to, just like all the rest of us, industrialized and pushed out all the garage miners. You know, I mean, there's several of my nerds that had a rack of ASICs running in their garage, but eventually it just got that profitability wasn't worth it, you know, so it pushes them out. So yes, sadly they really don't care. Most miners don't care about the black eye that Bitcoin gets for being, you know, inefficient.
Yeah,
it's not good. I understand all that, but
yes, exactly.
You know, we're mowing down forests and stuff and don't care for the same reason. I'm not saying that's good either, but I put it in the bubble. Is that, look, when you start talking about making money in industry and whatnot, that's a very fine balance. But, you know, I mean, things will be done to try to balance that out. But
okay. Are you open to hearing from anybody who might have some innovative ideas that they'd want to pitch to you in that direction?
Always open to cool ideas. I've learned the hard way is that, especially in today's society, is, oh man, there's some weird ones that'll come out. Not that this idea is weird, but I've learned.
But there might be.
Hold on. You know, and then it even gets into, oh, you know, check out this cool idea or whatever. You know, I don't know if it really works. Well, now I technically know some of your private information, and well, you stole it. I didn't steal it. I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. You know, so that's why I was like, oh man.
Oh yeah, no, that's an issue too, isn't it?
I'm down for it. But like I say, I've learned.
It has to flow right.
Yeah, like I say, if you reach out, and, I mean, only obviously divulge what you would feel comfortable with. But, and I mean, we're not looking to be a crypto incubator, so to say, but we, you know, we try to be innovators and things under either our umbrella or even joint ventures with other big organizations. But yeah, I mean, always curious especially if you're just going to sit on it. Man, I really wish I had $10 million to be able to do this, but I know I ain't going to ever be able to do it. Hey, sure.
Absolutely. Well, and especially if it ends up improving everybody's bottom line, whatever those different bottom lines might be.
Yeah.
It's a hard balance when you're dealing with industrialism versus environmentalism, but I don't see why it can't somehow magically come together either.
You know what bridges those two? Finance.
Yep, sure does.
And be, you know, anarchist if you want, but you know, when the government starts stepping in and tax, or even the power companies, whatever, stepping in and taxing the hell out of you, you know, That's how you balance it out. You may not
Yep.
like it.
Exactly.
Capitalism is a hard boulder to stop rolling, right? I mean, about the
Yep.
only thing that stops it is money. 'Cause that's
Yes.
the end game.
All right.
But it will be. I mean, there will be an evolution of things. I mean, just naturally from, within the industry, naturally from power companies just getting tired of burning out power lines like this, or residents. Like, I mean, Washington, I think, had a big uproar is that they used to have stupid cheap power because they had all those hydro dams. Boom, all the miners came rolling in. Ain't no cheap power anymore. There's no extra power. So now they're like, oh, well, this sucks, let's go back to the way we were.
Yep.
So, they and I think they're I don't know, taxing or raising prices or whatever they're doing, but they're trying to balance it back now because capitalism.
Exactly. Well, this has been absolutely eye-opening for me. I've learned a whole lot. I don't have any more questions. Do you have any questions or anything you wanted to address that we missed?
I don't think so. I mean, I'll
Okay.
talk about anything forever, but like when I get going on crypto, she just wishes I would stop. So
I understand. Well, in that case, in closing, what are you grateful for right now?
I'm grateful to be in this space at this time. I guess I'm grateful for my minion that just snuck up behind me. So
Yes. That is wonderful.
Okay, hold on. Let me finish this call. But, anyway, so yeah, that's like I say, it's an amazing time to be here. I'm floored that, I mean, it's my job, so I live this. It's really awesome. And excited to see where it'll go.
Me too. Excited and super curious. I'm grateful that you had time for this conversation because, like I said, you posted those pictures on the Telegram, and it was just a whole bunch of what even is that. So this has been great.
I try to go nerd all the time, right? And you'll see me drop them down. Oh, your water cooling PC's cute. Mine's the size of a house. Yeah,
Which is great.
I try to keep it lively, and then I mean, nobody. Yeah, there's not many of those, I don't think, in the world. I mean, there are some, and there's supercomputer centers that are like that, but little Bitcoin mining farms, I don't think there's too many of those. But it's always cool to blow people's minds. I don't know. That's that nerd. Mine's bigger than yours, right?
Exactly. Well, thank you for joining me, and I'm just going to flash this up real quick here. If anybody else likes what you're seeing, if you are awesome and you want to be on Jen's Awesome Show, send me a direct message on either the Telegram or the Twitter. Let me know, and maybe you can have as much fun as Michael hopefully just did. And with that, we're out, and we'll see you again. Thanks for joining me. This has been awesome.
See y'all.
See you.